Welcome to the final Beyond the Podium of this year's Vuelta. Stage 21 was a time trial. The race of truth proved to be truthful. Primoz Roglic, the strongest rider in this year's edition, the 79th in the Vuelta. The time trial, however, going the way of the Swiss star, Stefan Kung from the Groupama team. So finally some good news for Groupama. Big stage win. And Christian Vande, Stefan Kung, I'm not surprised he won the time trial. I am surprised it's his first Grand Tour stage win in his career. Pretty amazing considering how strong he is.
When you said that, I was like, no, that can't be it. I looked through the stats, like, oh yeah, I guess it is. I mean, even on the road as well. I mean, he's not no slouch whatsoever. You've seen him perform incredibly well. Paris Roubaix, like you mentioned during the show, seeing top fives there. I mean, but in the time trial, you just assume, and you should never assume, obviously. And that was the first one he's ever had. And how dominant, though. If you're going to take a win, you might as well crush him. And he crushed him indeed. I mean, by 30 some seconds. That's incredible over Primoz Roglic. No one else really was even close to him. And the average speed there and the way he left the start house, Bob, the motorbike couldn't even keep up with him going through Madrid. So it was really impressive. So hats off to Stefan Kuhn. And this is really good result there and confidence building going into the World Championships on home soil in Switzerland. So good for Stefan Kuhn and the rest. There was some drama, but really it was Ben O'Connor doing a fantastic ride. That was the biggest question mark going in there, only having 9 seconds on Enric Mas. And man, how good is Ben O'Connor showing himself, Bobby?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I enjoyed about Stefan Kung's win, his teammates, rather than go back to the hotel, get showered up, they waited there. And that shows you how much it means, a stage win in the Grand Tour. So I was really pleased to see Groupama finally get a stage win. It's been slim pickings for that team. And Thibaut Pinot, their big star, retired last year. David Gaudu really hasn't taken the mantle up, but Stefan Kuhn delivering a big win. It's kind of nice when your teammates can share that with you. When it's a time trial, they can watch the whole thing. That was cool.
Well, it's considering it's been 2.5 years since that team has won a stage in the Grand Tour. You better be there and celebrate with your teammates. So, yeah, it's been a long time for the team. They've had some success, and David Gaudu did a great GC. I mean, did fall one place down, but I think he still did a great GC considering how really subpar. I mean, the subpar was actually being too nice for the way he rode during the Tour de France. So big result for Groupama, but more importantly for Stefan. I mean, going into the Worlds again, like you mentioned, there's quite a few time trials, like there always is. Pro Nations, the European Championships. So it's really heavy. And Stefan saying afterwards that this was a perfect preparation for the World Championships. At least he thought. And this day and age, in years past, I'm talking almost decades now, the Vuelta was really the proving grounds for preparation for the World Championships. These days, especially what you just saw in the joke we always have about 200,000 feet of climbing throughout the 20 days of racing here, which sounds as ridiculous, but is the truth. It's almost too much, where you could try to come here to prepare, but you might be a little bit too smoked to actually do the best World Championships. But for Stefan, then maybe there's absolutely perfect, but you have to have the engine to boot to be able to do so.
Well, let's talk podium. Then we'll get to Primoz Roglic, but Ben O'Connor second, Enric Mas third, Richard Carapaz. Big battle between those three for just 2 spots. And Ben O'Connor doing great in my estimation, and especially riding well. Once he got out of the leader's jersey, seemed to be a lot of pressure and had a handy advantage over Primoz Roglic and the others after his big breakaway win on stage number 6. But the team had to step up. Let's talk about that squad, Decathlon. I've never seen them ride anywhere near that in a Grand Tour before.
That's a great statement. I don't think we've ever seen that either, but they never had to either. So they've never been in that kind of position. So, completely untested, lacking a lot of experience in those very testy situations where, cool heads definitely prevail. They had a couple of times where they had some stutter starts, where they did blow their top once in a while and they got yellow cards. There's 4 yellow cards handed out. This is still a test period, so there's really no big reaction with the yellow card yet. We'll see what happens with that in the UCI going forward. Nonetheless, they did a fantastic job. And I think that team grew tenfold by doing so. 13 days in any leader's jersey is no joke. And the way they performed and really kept it together, and some of the riders falling to pieces. For example, Felix Gall was nowhere to be seen the second week. And then he came back and did an incredible ride yesterday. But even when he did fall apart, Probably Poncha did fantastic. Bruno Amoraya did very good. And there's a lot of riders in between that warned us, Harold, that those guys are doing the meat and potatoes of all this work. But yeah, hats off to that team. I think they did fantastic. And this is only going to make their really confidence be that much stronger into 25. And taking the Vuelta away from the conversation, think about how much success they had even before this in their spring, what they had, Bob. I mean, they've had the best season they've had ever, really. And if you put this on top of that, easily the best season. So, but biggest difference is Ben O'Connor's not going to be on that team next year. So that's another talking point of how good they really did to support Ben O'Connor.
Yes,
Harada's not even going to be on their team next year. You could see some guys that forget him. He's not going to be with us. He's leaving us.
Absolutely.
Different team. But I think with that kind of opportunity at your fingertips, it'd be silly to think any different than going as good as you possibly can.
We have seen that in the past. Luckily, that did not turn out to be the case in the Vuelta. Richard Carapaz, Enric Mas, a pretty heated battle for the final spot in the podium, finally going the way of Enric Mas. So a little bit of good news, a sliver of light for the Movistar squad that has really had its struggles in recent years since the retirement of their big star, Alejandro Valverde.
The one consistent person has always been Enric Mas. So, I mean, it's his fourth time on the podium at the Vuelta. It's the first time he's in third place. He's 3 times second place before that. But they definitely have struggled. No one's going to make light of that at all. Seemingly a little bit behind the times as far as what they're doing with their riders, the training camps, nutrition, all those kind of things. Everyone's taking a massive leap forward. But that said, Enric Mas seemingly is the one rider who can continue to evolve and race with the very best. And I think that he was the best climber in this race. Maybe didn't show all the time because some of those time gaps would come back before the finish line, or Primoz would come back in the last 10 or 15 meters before the finish line, or he got brought back going on stage number 9, for example, with a minute advantage with all the GC riders working together. So I think they'll be very happy with getting this podium at the Vuelta. It's been 2 years since he was on the podium here, and I don't think it was the step that they wanted to be on, but I think any podium spot, they'd be very happy with Movistar.
Now let's talk about Primoz, and we can, I would think we can ascertain from what happens to Primoz when he's leading a Grand Tour or other stage races, maybe too early, did not happen in this year's Vuelta because of how well Ben O'Connor and his teammates did in this Vuelta. Maybe that was the best thing that could have happened for Primoz to eventually win this Vuelta.
Yeah, I think long story short, they did everything right. At the time, 451 seemed like a pretty big advantage to have with a rider who just got 4th place in the Giro d'Italia. They obviously were able to bring that back and then some, having almost 2.5 minutes at the finale after the time trial today. But I think, yes, in hindsight, Bob, that was the very best thing they could have done. They got to take pot shots at Ben O'Connor on every mountaintop finish that we've seen, even with the small Category 3 still line. And actually, in fact, that's the time where he pretty much took the most time out of Ben O'Connor, almost a minute on one of the stages alone. So I think it was perfect. I mean, all the hours added up that he didn't have to be doing the podium presentations, the days that you would have to add up, that the team didn't have to be on the front or worried about the composition of the breakaway going off the front. There was a lot of weight off their shoulders. So ultimately, I think it was the best course of action. Maybe a little bit scary at the time that it actually happened or went down, because I don't think they expected Ben O'Connor to not lose any time on the finishing climb that day, up on stage 6. But, I think that Primoz and that team could have won either way, Bob. I think that they had the leader's jersey the entirety. I think he still would have won. I think it would have been a lot harder, a lot more stressful, especially for the team. But I think 6 and 1, half another. I think Primoz would have won this either way. Either they raced it backwards from Madrid down to the Lisbon or Lisbon to Madrid. Either way, he would have won it.
One thing that impressed me was how fast Red Bull Bora learned from the mistakes in the Tour de France just a few weeks ago. And they didn't seem to always have Primoz in the perfect position when things got dicey. And that is one of the things that Primoz has got to overcome in his career. But right from the first stage number 2 out on the open road, it was Red Bull doing what the other GC contenders teams do. And that is have their guy, whether it's Tadej Pogacar, Jonas Vingegaard, Remco Evenepoel, en masse, duking it out with the sprinters on the faster stages, and then being there with their riders safe when it gets critical in the mountain stages. So all of those battles, Red Bull learned pretty quickly, and that might serve Primoz Roglic very well in the future. 5 Grand Tour stage wins so far hasn't been able to put that together in the Tour de France. That's the only mystery that Primoz Roglic, in my estimation, has to solve moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we may look back and see Primoz Roglic, his career being the best bike racer that's never won the Tour de France. I mean, as it is right now, I truly feel that. I mean, having 5 Grand Tours in the bag, like you just mentioned, but never been able to pull it off when it really matters in the Tour. I mean, the Tour still is the big dog. No one's ever going to question that. It is ultimate. But then now he's coming to like run some of the best riders of all time. So Primoz maybe had to stop before.
Now
it's a big problem, isn't it? Now you're against Michael Jordan. So what are you going to do? So that's hard to think of. But I agree with you with the way that they rode on the front, which is not easy, by the way. It's a very stressful for the team. It takes up a lot of energy, and you really have to think of the composition of your team. Who are the guys who can go 60 kilometers per hour on the front with the sprinter teams in the last 10 kilometers? So you have to think of the guys like Nico Dens and Gampy going to the races like this, and really think going into the Tour de France, okay, even though they can't climb as well as some of the other riders, we need these guys to keep our leader safe in these kind of situations. The times that you can't win the Tour de France, but you could definitely lose it, those cliches, they truly, they're there for a reason, because it happens so often. And unfortunately for Primoz, it happens a little bit too often from him in the Tour.
Well, I was very impressed the way they handled it throughout the 3 weeks, and let's hope that Primoz can carry that momentum and form and fitness forward for the Tour de France and avoid the bad luck. We have a few months, or I guess just a few weeks, before the route will be announced for next year's Tour de France and Giro and Vuelta. And how do you see the evolution of the sport, looking at how much climbing there is now in modern cycling, comparing the Vuelta to what we might see in next year's Tour de France, Christian?
No, that's a great question. I mean, as far as sporting, to actually enjoy watching the stages, I truly think these days the best stages are the category 2s and 3s, not the massive back-to-back above category climbs in the category 1s. That sometimes actually neutralizes the race. Obviously, we still need them. We need to be tested to see who's the best climber, of course. But as far as true racing goes, I want to see the category 2s and 3s. I don't think we need 200,000 feet of climbing to have a spectacle at our hands. And I think the ASO agrees with that. And I think that's what we're starting to see more of. But it also means it's not easy for the sprinters, because those kind of races are so much harder. A great example of that is we had a category 1, but it wasn't the hardest category 1 before the finish, 12K before the finish, and Caden Groves won that. Okay, in the Tour de France, would he have been there? That's a different kind of discussion, of course. But it doesn't always mean that it's going to be better racing or a better spectacle to watch on television. And that's a great question as well. Even just watching this Vuelta, we're so used to watching the Tour de France and how much drama there is day in, day out, and the people on the side of the road. In the Vuelta, you don't get that. And the feeling is completely different. So this was a great Vuelta. It truly was. And the numbers-wise, they were flying almost every stage, apart from the first couple of stages in Lisbon and Portugal, where they didn't go all in. It was incredible. It truly was, numbers-wise, and what they were accomplished. There wasn't almost any climbs that they didn't set a new record on. I mean, Eddie Dunbar just yesterday, 30 seconds faster than 3 years ago. Primoz Roglic, a minute faster on Montesquieu. Those are big numbers. It's a big advance in the sport. So it isn't for a lack of trying or how fast they're going. It's just the feeling that we get. So I have to remind myself that not every stage race is in the Tour de France. You don't get the same feeling. And I don't think you necessarily need the insane terrain to make it a good race. I mean, that's my best answer I could give you.
All right. Well, give me one rider that you didn't maybe know that much about before the Vuelta that you're most interested in following in the months, weeks, and years to come. One rider, one new revelation from this year's Vuelta.
Vacek, easily for me. Vacek from day one. Did not expect him. I didn't even know who really he was, to be honest with you. I mean, I've heard of him one time or two times, just knew that he was on Trek. But what he did in the time trial on the opening day, but more importantly, what he did in the breakaways and even the sprints, coming close to Wout van Aert in second place. I mean, whoa, what a talent he is. So I'm going to keep a keen eye on him. I mean, there's a lot of other riders. I'm going to know you're going to maybe go into some of the current guys.
You read my mind. I'm going to say Urco Berade. Pablo Castrillo, maybe the more obvious because of his wins, but Berade, fifth yesterday, Christian, on stage number 20, and a big stage win. And he seemed to be, in my estimation, a guy. If I looked at the roster beforehand, which obviously we do, you get to the current team, you look down the roster, you're like, no hope, never heard of him, forget about it, et cetera, et cetera. You get to Urco Berade, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I hope you can finish the race. But to be as good as he was is absolutely astounding. So what team he's on next year, that might determine how his career is going to unfold. Young rider and great talent. I'm really intrigued to watch his career progress. And I'll give you number 2, Primoz Roglic. He looks like a brand new rider than he was a couple of years ago. So frustrating in last year's Vuelta, crashing out of the Tour de France a couple of times, not being a factor when he should be. I'm looking at a brand new Primoz Roglic at his best for a new team for him, by the way, Red Bull Bora. So congratulations, Primoz Roglic, all of the riders that even finished this year's Vuelta. Brutal edition of the race. And Christian Vande Velde could not have been here, done it without you. And thanks a million. And I'm going to see you pretty soon, whether you want to or not. But the next big rendezvous, give me your favorite for the time trial and the road race in the World Championships.
Oh, that's a hard one. I have to go with Tadej, just because I feel like he really wants this one. And he elected to sacrifice going to Olympic Games and the Vuelta a España, where I think he would have most likely won either or of those, and really focus on getting the Triple Crown. That hasn't happened in a very long time since your era, Bob. So I would love to see him do that. And then, I mean, I feel this is a little bit too knee-jerky of a reaction given what we just saw, but the way Stefan Kuhn just rode today, wow. I mean, I would never have said that even a day ago, but after what I just saw here today, he's gonna be on the podium. I just don't know what step it's gonna be. And I just think that while he's got the confidence now, which I think he's always lacked, to really do the good work, I just hope he doesn't get too wrapped up in being at home for being in Switzerland for the World Championships. But so I'll go with Stefan.
Wow. Well, I'm going to agree with you with Tadej in the road race. Almost every race he's entered this year, he's won out. And when he's incentivized, he's flying. He's had a dream season. He's had one of these career-defining, best of all time seasons. I think the World Championships is going to be the next monument to add to the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. But in the time trial, I'm going to say Remco Evenepoel is going to win the TT.
Figured you say that. I mean, it's hard to not say Remco, especially the way he rode at the Olympic Games. I mean, you could have had a fast scooter and not beaten Remco out there. I mean, he was flying.
Oh, I wanted to ask you how hard it would be to go through those streets of Paris and be faster in a car, motorcycle, airplane than Remco was in the Olympic Games in Paris.
While it's raining.
Yes, raining also.
I mean, what Remco did over that week in Paris, I mean, might never be done again for an cyclist, especially in the modern era, to be able to do in both disciplines like that, and seemingly with ease. The way he rode away from, who was on his wheels? Stefan Kuhn, the last rider left on the road race.
That's right.
Stefan Kuhn is not a bad bike rider, as we've seen today, and he was sprinting on his wheels. So this conversation, I'm talking myself out of it as we go. But only reason I think Stefan has any chance whatsoever is just that it's so late in the season. Remco's been so focused.
Legitimate, yeah.
And I don't know how you keep that together. I know he's a young rider. I know he's extremely focused. He doesn't drink, doesn't do anything like that. He's not a party kid. So that's in his favor, but there's only so much you could ask for your body. Yeah. How long you keep that peak going. I mean, you could come down a little bit after Olympic Games, but to build back up again, that's not easy. Yes. So that's my only saving grace by going Stefan over Remco.
Well, speaking about drinking, I'm about to get into that just about now. Thanks, Christian. Thanks a million.
Wait. I can't let this go. even though you're outclassing me in your wardrobe, can you just do like one of these? I mean, you look Dr. Evil.
1 million. What was it? $1 million? Dad! That was 100 years ago.
1 billion.
This is
Thank you, Bobby.
How for Barracuda. Hold on. I'm pretty sure Dr. Evil didn't have the same lining that this straight out of Blighty made from the British Isles. This is traditional pubware, which is what I'm about to get into in Durango, Colorado, Christian Vande Velde. So I will see you soon. Thanks a million anyways. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Take care.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.